one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. We will make America great again.
Welcome to Team Trump Online.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Veterans for Trump on Team Trump Online. I'm Hogan Gidley, National Press Secretary for President Trump's re-election campaign, and it's my honor tonight to bring you the stories of two incredible patriots. Before we get started, please be sure to like and share this broadcast with your friends and family. Joining us tonight is Chad Robichaux, a former Force Recon Marine and DoD contractor with 8 deployments to Afghanistan as part of a JSOC task force and a Veterans for Trump advisory board member. Also joining us tonight is Karen Vaughan, a Gold Star mother whose son served honorably in the United States, but was tragically killed in Afghanistan. Karen, Chad, welcome to Team Trump Online, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having us on.
Absolutely. Let's begin by sharing your stories with our viewers at home. Chad, thank you for your service and all you've done for this country. Can you tell your story and why you believe President Trump is the best choice, the only choice this November for a commander-in-chief who stands up for our military?
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me on. My family's a family of 3 generations of combat Marines. My father served in Vietnam. My oldest son, Hunter, is actually just getting home from Afghanistan as a Marine. And I served, as you said, I did 8 deployments as a Force Reconnaissance Marine and a DoD contractor on a Joint Special Operations Command Task Force. After coming home, I suffered some of the same things that many of the warriors that we see today face. I suffered from a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, a near divorce between me and my family, who I've been married to my wife now for 25 years. And I had a battle with taking my own life. And if you guys don't know, the suicide rate is still over 20 a day. And I found myself with deep anxiety, depression, struggling with panic attacks every day, alone in the closet with a pistol in my hand, trying to decide whether I wanted to live or die. And a lot of things led me to, from that moment of being in a closet with my pistol, trying to make the decision to where I am today. But probably the most profound thing was the love and support of family, my wife, and some friends that came around me, and the restoration of my faith, which was very important to my own recovery through as a Christian. I had tried everything to get well when I was going through this. I tried the pills, the VA programs, all the counseling. I even had a lot of professional success post my deployments, but nothing had really changed my situation. But when I made the decision to align my life with the life I believe God created me to live, and mentorship came around me, I found restoration in my own situation. I found restoration in my family. I found hope for the first time in a very long time. And I found ultimately what I think we all search for in life, and that's purpose. And that purpose manifested for me in a deep desire to share what I had discovered with others. So you want to talk about the restoration of my own faith? The military has 4 pillars of resiliency: mind, the body, the spirit, and social. I had a strong mind. I had a strong body. I was able to perform as a special operator in Afghanistan pretty well. I even had a strong social network, but my spiritual foundation was broken. And that was a pillar of resiliency and recovery that I needed. And I knew I needed to share that with others. And so I founded the Mighty Oaks Foundation. And since I founded the Mighty Oaks Foundation, we've been able to serve, I've spoken to over 150,000 active duty warriors on bases around the world. I've run programs to help the recovery of over 4,000 active duty troops that come to 4 different ranches around the country to get well, and sharing the same things I discovered. But during this work of doing this, my own recovery and doing this work for other veterans, I worked under both administrations, the Obama administration and President Trump's administration. During the Obama administration in 2009, President Obama signed an executive order to remove faith and opportunity programs from the VA and DoD. And that was catastrophic. At the time he made the decision to sign an executive order, the suicide rate was 16 a day. After that decision and shifting to 100% clinical care, the suicide rate spiked to 22 a day, costing thousands of American warriors' lives. And so in 2016, I had the unique opportunity, based on my own story and my own experience, to ask a candidate Trump at the time. I was part of a town hall meeting to ask candidate Trump any question I could ask. And the most important question to me, the most important question that I knew to ask because of my own recovery and the recovery of thousands of warriors that I've been able to serve at Mighty Oaks Foundation, that question was, Mr. Trump, if you become president of the United States, will you bring faith-based programs back into the VA and DOD? And he answered yes. And a lot of people say things in election campaigns, but he followed through with that in action. And in 2018, President Trump signed an executive order to bring faith and opportunity community programs back into the VA and DOD. And we're seeing that implemented now. The president has rolled out the Prevents Task Force, which is the president's roadmap to empower veterans and end the national tragedy of veteran suicide. He's executed policy and championed legislation to reform the VA, firing 9,000 bad employees in the VA that were allowed to stay in the VA while President Obama's and Biden's administration was at the helm. I've just seen all these things roll out. And, you know, the president said during his campaign that he was going to reduce government spending, and he did. He reduced government spending in every area but two areas, the DOD and the VA. Why? Because our nation deserves to be safe. And we needed to put funding back to the DOD to rebuild our military because during the Obama administration, the Biden administration, it was reduced to such a small size. The morale was so terrible, and the equipment was not up to par during the most critical times in the war on terror. And so seeing President Trump do that to reform the VA, to equip our troops, even giving the troops a pay raise, to bring a $73 billion budget in the VA, which was the biggest in history, because he believes that America doesn't only deserve to be safe, but our warriors that keep America safe need to be able to come home and get the care that they deserve. And this president has done that, and we cannot afford to go backwards under any other administration than President Trump's administration moving forward in 2020.
Chad, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. What a great story. I'm glad you are where you are now. I appreciate the kind words, too, about the president. Let me assure you, having served in the White House for 3 years, he cares so much about our veterans, not just today, but the ones of yesterday and the ones of the future. And the policies he's put in place are, as you pointed out, not just the promises made, they're the promises kept. He'll always keep those promises to our veterans. Thank you very much for your story. Karen, you lost your son Aaron when his chopper was shot down. It's just a horrifically sad tale, but can you share some of that story and how the specific words and actions of Joe Biden's White House put our men and women in uniform, including your son, in some serious grave danger?
Yes, and let me just start first, Hogan, if you don't mind, just saying, Chad, beautiful story and so touching and personally to me because you know, as Hogan just said, I lost my son in Afghanistan in 2011. He was my firstborn child, my only son, you know, tremendously close family. The loss we suffered was unthinkable and unlivable, except for the fact that we had our faith, Chad, like you, and that kept us moving forward and putting one foot in front of the other. But yes, Hogan, what you just asked me about is one of the most terrible tales in our nation's history, as far as I'm concerned. And that is this, and I'm just gonna create a timeline here for people so they understand exactly what happened. On May 1st, American forces took out Osama bin Laden. All of you probably remember where you were when you got the word. I mean, it was one of those nights where, you know, we as America just celebrated finally the mastermind of 9/11 had been taken out. And I remember that night, you know, our son called home and he said, Dad, my son was a member of SEAL Team 6. And he called home and he said, Dad, we got him. And my husband, Billy, said, got who, son? You know, we just totally out of the blue, a phone call. That's all he said. And he said, Dad, we got him. And all of a sudden it dawned on Billy who he was talking about. And he said, they're about to announce it on television. They don't even know what the news is yet, but they know the big news is coming. So it was a night of unimaginable celebration in our household. As you can imagine, we called all the other family members and told them to turn on the television and watch the news that, you know, they were about to explain something that Aaron had just called home and told us about it. So, you know, and I remember that night when Barack Obama came on television, he said, and I'm going to read these words because I always like to quote people accurately. He said, a small team of Americans carried out the operation. It's key to say that because what I'm about to tell you followed that course not at all. So that was May 1st, 2011. On May 2nd, 2011, leaks began emerging all over the national press that SEAL Team 6 had conducted the raid. And I know that in today's era, this doesn't seem like a big deal, but this was pre I mean, you have to understand that the greatest weapon Navy SEALs ever had was their privacy and their secrecy. This was unprecedented that this leak broke. It had never happened before. And so people were trying to squelch the leak. We know that from people we talked to in authority at the White House after this occasion, that people were trying to do everything they could to squelch it, to protect the identities of the men who'd run the raid, to protect their families. But instead of them protecting it and pulling those stories back, on May 3rd, our Vice President, Joe Biden, announced at a speech he was giving at the Atlantic Council that it was in fact SEALs that ran the raid, that killed Osama bin Laden. And what you have to understand, people try to thwart this story all the time, and it really frustrates me because they say, oh, people are saying that Joe Biden outed SEAL Team 6, and that's a lie. And Reuters and every fact checker says this isn't a fact. But let me tell you something, it is a fact, because until Joe Biden confirmed it on May 3rd, it was only speculation. It was hearsay. Nobody had been named as a source. It was all media hearsay. And so at that point, it had no validity until Joe Biden confirmed that it was the Navy SEALs that took out Osama bin Laden. And you need to know that all hell literally broke loose after that event that night. My son, that was May 3rd. On May 4th, my son actually called home. His voice literally unnerved. I had never seen him. I'd never heard him speak this way. He'd been in service for 9 years at this point. He'd been deployed multiple times. He was no coward, certainly, but he was unnerved. He was shook, Hogan. And this is what he said. He said, Mom, you need to wipe your social media clean. I mean, you need to get everything off of it that has any reference to me or any of my buddies. And I said, of course, son, I will, but what's going on? He said, Mom, there's chatter. And our lives are in danger. Our families' lives are in danger. And Mom, your life is in danger. I couldn't even process at the time what he was saying because it was so far removed from me, national security and things of this sort. Even though he'd been a Navy SEAL for all these years, I was pretty far removed from it in Stewart while he was fighting across the globe, right? And so here's what happened afterward is it then became very confirmed for me after that, his unnerved speech, and we talked about it several times in the following days, specifically about what Joe Biden had done and how it had put a target on not only the Navy SEALs' backs, but also on every special operator that was working in the region in Afghanistan right now against the border of Pakistan. And I mean, we had these talks over and over again. He was upset. And then just so anybody listening to this knows, this isn't just my emotional son or an emotional mom having this conversation. On May 12th, there was such an upstir through the special warfare community that on May 12th, Defense Secretary Robert Gates actually went and spoke with fighters at Camp Lejeune to talk to them about what had happened, about the leaks that had come from the White House, to try to calm their nerves. And actually, Robert Gates later released a book that told us all how he felt about that and what an unbelievable moment in history it was for him. But he actually said to those men and women at Camp Lejeune that everyone in the situation room that night during the raid had agreed that no details would be released, that it was classified, it was top secret. And then he said these words, and I quote him, but that all fell apart the next day. This is tragic. May 18th, things were so stirred up in the special warfare community still that on May 18th, Robert Gates, again, who was Defense Secretary at the time, and Joint Chiefs Chairman Admiral Mike Mullen made another trip to speak with war fighters who were concerned, who were having double locks put on their wives' doors. They were afraid to deploy and leave their families at home. And you know, again, Robert Gates expressed, I'm very concerned about this because we wanted to retain the capability to do these kinds of operations in the future, and this is prohibiting us from doing it. He actually said, when so much detail is available, it makes it difficult and riskier. And Admiral Mike Mullen went on to say, we have, from my perspective, gotten to a point where we are close to jeopardizing this precious capability we have, and we can't afford to do that. And of course, what he was talking about was our ability to operate in secrecy and privacy and not broadcast to the world what was happening. Well, unfortunately, their worst fears came true. And you can tie a direct line to this if you want, and you can be one of those people who shuts your eyes and says there is no direct line. But we know from military records that by May 10th, after these leaks came out, that there were over 100 Pakistani Taliban that moved into the Tangi River Valley of Afghanistan, where SEAL Team 6 was operating with the expressed intent of revenge for Osama bin Laden. Now, it's not a far stretch to say that then what happened on August 6th, and their main mission was to shoot down a chopper full of special warfare operators as revenge. And so the chopper attacks began. They were relentless, and finally on August 6th, they achieved their goal, and they took down Extortion 17 was the call sign of the chopper that actually carried 30 American warfighters that night and 1 working service dog. And let me just tell you something, it was the largest loss of life in the history of naval special warfare, and still to date, the single largest one-day loss of life in this entire war. And I do tie the thread directly back to Joe Biden and the White House leaks, and we cannot afford ever to let a man like that be at the helm of the world's greatest military. It just can't happen again.
Miss Karen, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I do appreciate you sharing that story. That's incredible, and it's something that you probably won't hear anywhere in the mainstream media as this campaign continues. And I have to say, when you work in the building and you're privy to information that could jeopardize lives both here and abroad, that's a very it's a very serious responsibility, and it's something I took as such. You don't talk to the press about that type of information at all, and anyone who leaks, quite frankly, something of that nature, of course, it's the most selfish, most cowardly, most dangerous thing someone can do. But for a vice president like Joe Biden to come out and openly say it, not even really leaking it, but saying it, is just astounding. And I can't believe something like that isn't more reported on right now.
And Hogan, if I may
side.
add,
Please.
He took a victory lap on he took a victory lap, and it cost the death of 30 Americans.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Chad, obviously you just heard that story as well, and please feel free to address it. But what danger would a Joe Biden presidency pose to not just our men and women in uniform, but to all of our national security family?
Well, Karen said it best in her story. And Karen, I'm so sorry for your loss. I had some friends that part of Extortion 17, and it was such a tragedy. And I 100% agree. You are absolutely right. There is a direct correlation between the Obama and Biden administration and the results of that attack. I've heard the exact same thing from the community special operations myself. We don't have to guess what our military will look like and our VA would look like under a Biden administration. We don't. That's one of the great things about this election. We already know what President Trump is going to do because we've seen what he's done for the last 3 years. But we've already seen what President Biden would do because we've seen it for 8 years. So this is not a guesswork. We already know. And I can tell you firsthand, I've been around the military for almost 30 years now. I enlisted in 1993, and ever since I've been out, I still serve through our work at the Mighty Oaks Foundation. And I have never seen the morale in the military as low as I did in 30 years. Never seen the morale as low as I did, except under the Obama and Biden administration. People were frustrated. You're talking about downsizing in manpower and budgets during the most critical times in the war on terror, and putting rules of engagement on our warfighters that literally cost American lives on the battlefield. Rules of engagement while President Obama and Joe Biden were out on their apology tour, going around the world apologizing for the United States of America and the United States military. And we're seeing Biden do that right now.
Yes, he's doing it today.
For America
right
now. And he's ashamed of our country. We've seen President Obama express shame for our country and apologize. And this puts American service members who are deployed right now. The media doesn't cover it, but they're deployed right now around the world. When you start apologizing for Americans and what we do in the battlefield as the United States military, it puts our lives at danger. It puts our lives at danger in doing that. And additionally, the VA, as I said earlier, was just a mess under the Obama-Biden administration. And he could blame President Obama and say, well, I wasn't the president at the time. But one of the great examples of this is Vice President Pence and Karen Pence. Those two are leading the way in veteran suicide. Karen Pence is just such an amazing woman. She loves our warriors, just like the president and vice president does. And she's leading the helm in the Prevents Task Force. The president's given her that responsibility. She's been doing such a good job to make sure the Prevents Task Force rolls out and we can eradicate veteran suicide. And we haven't seen anything like that when Joe Biden was vice president. And so it's dangerous to put someone like him, as Karen said, it's dangerous to put someone like him at the helm to our active duty military who are defending our nation around the world right now, but even more so for the veterans that come home and deserve the care that we need, to have the choice programs that the president's put in place, to have the VA reform. And we're just seeing these things roll out. I mean, the president has faced so much obstruction in the last 3 years. The fact that he's got anything done is just miraculous to me. But the things that he's done in the last 3 years for our veteran community and for the active duty military within the DOD and VA, we cannot afford to go backwards. We're just seeing these things start to be implemented. And I know this because I'm in some of these initiatives to see these things implemented. We're just seeing them implemented. We're seeing Secretary Wilkie of the VA bringing faith-based programming back in the VA to give them those 4 pillars of choice for care. And we just can't afford to go backwards. That's why President Choice must remain in office. It's critical to the care of our veterans and also to the combat readiness of our active duty military.
Thank you so much. And Secretary Wilkie is a friend of mine. He's done an outstanding job carrying out the president's policies, of course, as you know. I really appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. Ms. Karen, can you tell us about, how the Obama engagement put our military in unnecessary danger?
Yeah. Okay. So Hogan, that's what actually got me off my couch and getting active. It's what finally led me to a private meeting with our president now, Donald Trump, before he was elected. It's what got me to the RNC, where I spoke about Make America Strong Again, was what I learned in my little home office in about 2012 that literally turned the world upside down for me. And I'm a numbers person because I love opinions and I love sharing opinions, but when it gets right down to it, numbers are something all of us can trust, right? There's something that really tell a story. And so I'm in my little home office one day, not long after we'd lost Aaron, and I had started hearing stories from different warfighters about these rules of engagement and couldn't believe what I was hearing. Things like one man that collapsed on my shoulders crying after a speaking event who said, we just got word that from now on, if an RPG is aimed at our unit, we're not allowed to fire on the guy holding it until he shoots it. I mean, things like that. That's what was happening in that apology era of Barack Obama and Joe Biden. But here's what I found out that got me out there in this fight, Hogan and Chad. This is what it was. I found out just from simple research that in the first 7.5 years of war in Afghanistan under George Bush, we lost 630 U.S. troops. Terrible number. And I'm not saying that number flippantly because I have a casualty in my family. So I don't say 630. Those are 630 homes that are forever destroyed, forever changed, circles and circles of friends and family that are forever altered. But let me say that one more time. First 7.5 years of war in Afghanistan, we lost 630 troops. Then came Barack Obama, Joe Biden. And you need to hear what I say when I say this. And I even wish you guys would put this on the screen somehow, write it down so people can absorb what I'm about to tell you. In the next 8 years under Barack Obama, when he began implementing his new rules of engagement with the COIN strategy, the counterinsurgency strategy in March, the year he was inaugurated, in his 8 years, the death toll was 1,758. 630 in the first 7.5 years, 1,758 in the next. And let me tell you what's even more staggering is wounded in action. And Chad, you know this all too well. So many of our veterans have come home with this suicide rate we're talking about. We're talking about traumatic brain injuries. We're talking about post-traumatic stress. Right. We're talking about vile injuries. But and all of them aren't even calculated. But listen to these numbers. In the first 7.5 years of war in Afghanistan under George Bush, our wounded in action were 2,645. Anybody on here care to take a guess what it was during the 8 years of Barack Obama?
It was in the tens of thousands.
17,592. Wow. Now, When I went to Donald Trump, the one thing that I asked him before he was our president, and thank God he is our president, the one thing I said is, will you please change the rules of engagement to be in favor of our sons and daughters coming home? If we are going to hand them to you as our commander in chief and put their lives in your hands, at least give them the weapons they need to fight. We're the greatest military the world has ever known, yet we were losing to an enemy that had nothing. They were farmers, and I'm not saying that, you know what I'm trying to say? It was astounding that we were losing at such a rate to these uncivilized people that had nothing that we had, and the only reason we were is because of Obama's rules of engagement. And Joe Biden, right along with him, I hold him equally accountable. So does anybody care? I'll tell you, I'm not going to make you guess again, but this is what our president came through for me. And I have fought for a lot of VA reform too, Chad. I worked with Concerned Veterans for America for several years, fighting on Capitol Hill for VA reform and to do better by those who came home. But my main goal ever was changing the rules of engagement so that our warfighters had a greater chance of coming home. And here's what happened since Donald Trump has taken office. We have had 63 deaths in Afghanistan. 63. And we have had 425 wounded in action. Those are people. Those are lives that were saved because Donald Trump became the president of the United States.
And I can share with you, Karen, as a father, I did my 8 deployments in Afghanistan. I never thought when I was in Afghanistan that I would be sending my son to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And when he left, that was my 9th deployment for me. And that was the hardest by far deployment, to send my son to a place that I'd been, and seeing the things that I seen there, and seeing the people come home through the work I do at Mighty Oaks. It was terrifying for me. But the one peace of mind that I had, well, several pieces of mind. One is my faith and my just confidence in him really helped me to have peace with him going. But the most pragmatic thing that helped me have peace was who was the commander in chief. Different rules of engagement, because I would have, if my son would have had to deploy like yours did during Obama Biden administration, I would have been, I don't know how I would have been able to handle it. But knowing
people were quite literally sacrificed during that administration. We can never go back to that. That's what's so unbelievable. The rules of engagement, obviously you guys are both pointing out how important that is, and to change them to actually favor the American military is so important. And you can rebuild the military like Donald Trump has done, $2 trillion, so that you have the up-to-date equipment and the tanks and the guns and the rockets and all the things you need. But the fact is, if the rules of engagement aren't such that you can protect yourself, it makes it a really, really sad situation, no doubt. Thank you both. Hogan, can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
I wanted to tell everybody listening to this that the reason I bring that up is because Aaron and those other 29 Americans absolutely died at the hands of rules of engagement from that administration. Because here's what happened is their chopper was coming in. There was a Ranger raid going on. It had been going on for 3.5 hours. The SEALs had been called in as a reinforcement, a quick reaction. And so as their chopper is coming in, there's an AC-130 Spectre gunship overhead who begs over and over again to lay down fire, just suppressive fire. And they're told over and over again they can't. 8 times they asked to take out heavily armed insurgents on the ground who were setting up tubular structures on top. This is at 2:30 in the morning on top of a building. And over again, they were told they could not take those people out. So they had to sit there in the air and watch them shoot that helicopter down and watch 30 of their brothers die in a blaze that looked like the sun, is how it's described.
Well, listen, I can't tell you both how much I appreciate it. I think it's time we take a short break so that the folks at home can watch a new campaign ad. And after that, we'll be right back with more Veterans for Trump on Team Trump Online.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
My administration will take all necessary steps to safeguard our citizens from this threat.
Hysterical xenophobia.
Giving Americans a false sense.
Is it accurate that if these steps had not been put in place, it could have been 2 million people dead here in the United States?
Yes.
No matter how hard they try to stop us, they can't. We built the greatest economy the world has ever seen, and we're going to do it again.
Together we're beating back the invisible enemy.
What the federal government did was a phenomenal accomplishment.
Through it all, the world has witnessed the unyielding resolve of our incredible American people.
Promise made, promise kept.
And I'm fighting for you, and I love doing it with everything that I have. And you know that. With the grace of God, we will win this war, and we will win this war quickly. And we will make America great again.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black. And you ain't black. And you ain't black. And you ain't black.
It was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country.
Welcome back to Veterans for Trump on Team Trump Online. I'm Hogan Gidley, and back with us are Karen Vaughan and Chad Robichaux. Karen, would you share with us, all the listeners, all the viewers out there, just how important it is to have a commander-in-chief who stands with all of the men and women in uniform?
Well, you know, we're watching right now happen on our streets, Hogan, what happened in Afghanistan under the former administration. We're watching rules of engagement where all these liberal leftist governors and mayors are trying to put rules of engagement on our law enforcement officers that are equal to the rules of engagement that our warfighters fought under the last Democrat reign, for a better word. And so it is critically important that you put people, in power, who love America.
Right.
Because that's the most fundamental principle, right? These people don't love America. So A, you put people in charge that love America. B, you put people in charge who respect what those who stand between us and danger have done and continue to do. They've got to respect that. And I have found in my personal meetings with President Donald Trump, he has the utmost respect for those who serve in any form or fashion. And that to me was just, like, well, isn't that the least we should expect from somebody? But it's just not true in our world anymore. So we have to physically make sure we're supporting somebody who does have the same values that most Americans share. But unfortunately, in this rundown for the president of the United States, in this rundown, we've got a decision to make. We've got anarchy on one side, and we've got law and order and a world that cares about protecting those that live inside this country. It's a very clear delineation, no question about it.
I think you're absolutely right. And I have to say, Miss Karen, and Chad, we're going to go to you here, but let's be very clear. You pointed out something, Chad, earlier, and I think I want to press on that a little bit. It's you don't have to guess what the military would look like under Joe Biden. You don't have to guess what our city streets and our towns and our communities, and you don't have to guess about the dangers our families would face with Joe Biden in the White House. We've seen it. And when the looting started, the rioting started, people smashing in storefronts, stealing merchandise, dragging innocent Americans out into the streets, beating them within an inch of their lives just for simply trying to protect their own businesses. Joe Biden didn't say anything. And when he did pop up out of the hidey hole, he just pointed out, hey, I've kind of turned against some of the law enforcement officers, and they could be considered enemies of the people. That's a stark difference where Joe Biden is and where Donald Trump is. He wants safety and security for our families. And make no mistake about it, your families are not safe with Joe Biden, and your American way of life, as Karen just said, is not safe with Joe Biden because it seems like he's waging war on those issues, and it's a real sad place to be. Many veterans, in fact, come back from deployment and join police departments at home. So, Chad, what does the left's hatred for law enforcement and the military mean for our nation?
Well, Hogan, America is a free nation, but it's only a free nation because it has been fought for and maintained by our military warriors. And then it's also maintained every day by our nation's heroes and law enforcement on the streets of America. And what Joe Biden, the position that Joe Biden has chosen to take, it just blows my mind. I can't even believe that. I mean, it shocks me that he would take that position, especially during a campaign. But he's calling for things like removal of qualified immunity for our police officers, which is absolutely insane. That would deter any any good candidate from ever wanting to be a police officer. And we're seeing things that he's aligning with, like cutting police training, defunding the police, removing they so-called military equipment, which is what our special units need, like SWAT teams and EOD. They want to take away that equipment from our law enforcement officers. Even things like removing resource officers from our inner city schools. Right. I mean, what happened to school shooters? Who's going to pay the price for this are our most vulnerable in our communities, and they're going to be harmed by this. Not the political elites. Look, Joe Biden has Secret Service details. All these people that are pushing this agenda have security details. The people that are going to suffer are the people in the inner cities that don't have security and don't have the support and safety of the policemen. These brave men and women who are getting their spit on right now, yelled at, screamed in their face, but they're willing to go in those communities every day and leave the safety of their families and go defend them. And we have a president right now that is standing against the mob in the political pressure of wanting to be on one side or other. This president is standing against that, and he's supporting our police even when it's not popular, which the fact that it's not popular, again, blows my mind. But this president has not backed down. And in fact, not only has he not backed down, but he's actually brought forth the very solution and the very things that the people are protesting for, like better training for police officers, police reform. The president hasn't denied that needs to take place. In fact, him and Senator Tim Scott have pushed this forward. The only thing that's stopping police reform from happening are the Democrats on the left playing political politics and not putting Americans first.
That's right.
We are a nation of law and order, and President Trump understands that, and he knows in order for us to be a free nation, we have to support our police. We have to fund our police.
Isn't it amazing how the media too tries to cover for Joe Biden when he's asked, a question right to his face? Do you want to redirect funds away from the police? Shouldn't we agree that we should redirect funds? He says, yes, absolutely, we should. And the media says that doesn't mean defund. It just means redirect. And so I'm asking you, Karen, and you, Chad, what if I told you next month when you get your paycheck, I'm not going to defund it. I'm just going to redirect a lot of the money you get into my bank account. How does that sound? It's the same thing. The media are just playing semantical games, as you guys well know. But Karen, when you look at the mistreatment of those on the front lines, do you believe it's even possible for radical leftists to provide necessary support for law enforcement and the military and to keep our country safe at all?
Of course not. It's not theoretically possible. It does not align with their theology. Their theology is no law, no order, no structure, no anything, no borders. When we witnessed as a nation what happened in Seattle, could you even believe what you were looking at? And then all of a sudden when it's finally called off, then they want money from the rest of the nation to fix their debacle, to clean up their streets. It is insanity. I don't know how anybody could possibly be in their right mind and think that the world would be a better place with Joe Biden in charge. It's not possible.
It isn't. You're absolutely right. And Chad, as I just mentioned, Joe Biden said he would, absolutely redirect funds from the police department. What are the dangers of a Joe Biden presidency when it comes to protecting those who risk their lives, those brave men and women of law enforcement for us, and keep our communities safe?
Well, Joe Biden he's picked a side. He's siding with the leftist mob, and it shows where his loyalties lie. They lie with political pandering for an election, not the safety and well-being of the American people. And again, we don't have to guess what the result will be. We see it happening right now. It's unfolding. You just have to get past the headlines. Because the headlines of mainstream media is not going to tell you the story. Get past the headlines and look at the results of this defund the police movement. Look what's happening in the Democratic-run cities like New York, Chicago, LA, and Detroit, where we're seeing thousands of shootings. Every one of those cities are at record high shootings since this defund the police movement. And I believe any elected official that vocally supports this defund the police movement should be held accountable and liable to the harms and death. These aren't just These are people that are dying because of the result of this, and a lot of them are. We're seeing children being shot in these inner city shootings, and that's the result. That's what you're going to see. But I think it's important to be honest about what this is really about, because none of this is a movement And I don't think Joe Biden's aligning with a movement of justice and equality. I believe all those things are a Trojan horse that are ushering in a socialist communist uprising. And that's what Joe Biden has aligned himself with. They choosing to hitch his wagon to this communist movement and this communist uprising in our country. And that to me, that should scare every American. And if anything else gets you out there to vote in November, it should be the fear of that. November isn't a vote for a Republican or Democrat. It's a freedom or tyranny in the future of America.
Absolutely. Ms. Karen, what is your message to those like Joe Biden and the other Democrats who are trying to defund our brave police officers?
Well, I'd say until these brave people making these calls out there are willing to eliminate every form of security that now protects them or the ones that they love, they really need to, as my mom used to say, shut their pie hole, right? Because their argument is intellectually dishonest, and you really should be called out on the carpet for your utter hypocrisy.
I agree. Chad, that's a great saying, by the way, from your mom. Chad, you've been an outspoken supporter of President Trump and have often come to his defense when the media tries to twist his words. What would you like to say to those in the media who insist on misrepresenting President Trump and the actions he's taken to support our military?
Yeah, well, I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. I mean, when I asked President Trump that question during that town hall meeting, if he would bring faith-based programs back into the VA, and he said yes, the media completely twisted his words, and I had to get out and defend them then. And that was at the beginning of 2016, and I've seen it nonstop since. And anybody that would take the time to look beyond the headlines in these headlines that attack the president and just see for yourself. Don't believe CNN. Don't believe Fox News. Don't believe the campaign. Don't even believe me. Look for yourself and find we cannot trust the mainstream media anymore. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. Right. You cannot trust the mainstream media anymore. They will lie, twist, and they have shown very, very explicit bias. And the question that really should concern everyone is, why are they biased? Who's pushing the agenda? Who's pushing the narrative? And but don't trust it. I say, you see a headline, it's something that bothers you, take the time. Your future is important enough. Take the time to find out the facts for yourself.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you both so much for joining us this evening and sharing your stories. And our nation thanks you for all you both have done in protecting our country and standing up for our men and women in uniform. You've heard tonight about why it's so important to re-elect President Trump. You have also heard a tragic story about what can happen to a brave soldier when the military is not supported by a president and vice president. And before we conclude tonight's broadcast, though, I do want to encourage all of you to join our fight for 4 more years of national security and a strong military. To join our Veterans for Trump coalition, text FIGHT to 88022. Again, that's FIGHT to 88022. Visit armyfortrump.com or text APP, that's APP, to 88022 to learn how you can host MAGA meetups, volunteer for the campaign, and conduct phone banking from the comfort of your own home. There's only a few short weeks to go with so much on the line, so stand with us in our fight. We'd sure appreciate it. With that, let's get some final thoughts from our guests this evening. Over to you, Karen. Would you like to say a few words to finish up?
Yeah, I just want to say that the America that all of us have been privileged enough to grow up in, raise our families in, is an America worth dying for. People have asked me many times, was it worth it? Was it worth it to lose your son for this nation? And I have said over and over again, absolutely, unabashedly, my answer is yes, America's worth it. I've said over and over again that everywhere I look, I see the reason that Aaron Vaughan gave his life. But I will tell you that in the last few months, watching this anarchy break out across our nation and watching weak, spineless leaders do nothing about it has made me, for the first time ever, question whether America was worth it. And I believe that the only way that we're going to restore the greatness of this nation is to give Donald Trump 4 more years in office and keep these Marxists out of our nation's capital.
Thank you so much, Karen. Chad, wow. Final thoughts?
Wow, it's hard to follow up that, Karen, and but I mean, I just share that sentiment with you. It may sound strange, but I'll close with a quote from Joe Biden himself, and it's actually a quote I agree with. He says, "The soul of our nation is at stake in this election," and in fact, it is. We must fight for our country, the soul of it, and our future is at stake. And we have to protect America. And we each, no matter who you are, where you come from, what color your skin is, what your job is, we all have the ability to protect America by getting out there and voting in November and re-electing President Trump.
Thank you so much. A huge thank you to both of you. God bless you both, Chad Robichaux and Karen Vaughan. And thank you to everyone at home who tuned in tonight as well. Until our next episode, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep fighting with us for 4 more years of historic prosperity with President Donald J. Trump. God bless.